Alright, so we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about this. I've got my cup of coffee here and I'm fired up. This is going to be addressing the PETA tweet about Steve Irwin from a vegan. This is going to be a talking head video, so if you want to open up another tab, scroll through another website, lower my ugly mug down, feel free. But in honor of Steve Irwin's birthday, PETA put out a couple of tweets. Steve Irwin's actions were not on target with his supposed message of protecting wildlife. A real wildlife expert and someone who respects animals for the individual they are leaves them to their own business in their natural homes. It is harassment to drag exotic animals, including babies taken from their mothers, around from TV talk shows to conferences and force them to perform as Steve Irwin did. Animals deserve to live as they want to, not as humans demand. The hashtag Google Doodle should represent that. Well, the Google Doodle is obviously going to be the little doodle at the top that Google does every day just to represent a different holiday or something. So I've been saying for a long time that PETA is the Westboro Baptist Church of veganism. They are extremists and they're unrealistic. I'm so tired of trying to talk to somebody about conservation and about protecting animals and a vegan diet and then just hearing about something stupid that PETA's done. PETA has isolated an entire community, an entire generation that was brought up with Steve Irwin. Steve Irwin was big on conservation, on protecting animals. He wanted to buy land to make sure it wasn't torn down. The best example of this in the reptile community is going to be the Euryplatus sakurae, the mossy leaf-tailed gecko. They're from Madagascar, and Madagascar is facing a lot of deforestation due to animal agriculture. But rather than addressing this generation that was brought up loving Steve Irwin and learning about wildlife and starting to give a shit, PETA isolated this entire generation and put it us against them, vegans against reptile lovers. So while I eat a vegan diet, I do keep reptiles and I do keep animals, and PETA is just too narrow-minded to understand why. So I live in Texas, and a very common phrase here is the only good snake is a dead snake. And you hear that all the time. Of course, Texas is home to the Sweetwater Rattlesnake Roundup, and it's a huge tragedy. I made a video about it if you want to check it out. I put a button up there, and I can't wait for somebody to watch this and then try and just disregard everything I said about the Roundup just because I eat a vegan diet. The opposite of fear is education. Teaching somebody about these animals, the more they learn about them, the more they fall in love with them, the more they respect them. And when you start loving this animal and you start getting education, you start to give a shit. You start to care where they're from. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of deforestation, and you could get these reptile lovers, these exotic animal lovers, and an entire generation who grew up with Steve Irwin to recognize, hey, here's a way to protect these animals. You know, you can bring them on and you can show them the good reasons for a vegan diet. So while PETA is isolating people and making vegans look out of touch, you have the meat industry trying to attack alternative and plant-based meats the same way the dairy industry tried to with alternative milks. I've always said the hardest part about being vegan is the culture that surrounds it, especially in the US. Those are things that are important. Those are things that matter. Going after Steve Irwin after his death, there's a parallel there of Westboro Baptist Church protesting a soldier's funeral. I won't say it's the same. There's definitely their differences and both deserve their respects, but there's that parallel there. Now I know I'm gonna get a lot of people saying, you're not vegan, you're plant-based. Call it what you will, label it what you will, but at the same time, I will also argue that my method is more effective than your method. If you wanna help animals and you wanna help wildlife, stop sticking to a label and stop sticking to a status quo that's high school stuff. Look at what's effective and look at what can actually change hearts and minds. To dive into a little bit of PETA side, they're looking at the individual intrinsic value of that animal. It's a defense mechanism for a rattlesnake to rattle, for a cobra to hood up. You know, those are the reasons they do those things. But it's the instrumental value of the animal as a whole, the species as a whole. Steve was looking at the bigger picture. If I do a video of a rattlesnake rattling, of course its cortisone levels are going to be raised. But are you going to argue with me on that? Or are you going to stand with me in the education side of things to show people why rattlesnakes are important in an environment? But I just want to address that what PETA tweeted is not what vegans stand for. Whether you completely agree with Steve Irwin or not is not the issue. But communication is all about finding a common ground, and isolating people is just not the way to do it. So if you want a real discussion on the benefits of keeping animals or protecting wildlife, PETA is not the place to start. The Humane Society of the US is not the place to start. If you want more information, check in the links down below. But I appreciate you guys for listening to my talking head, and I'll see you guys next time.